The city of Neon Shroud pulsed with a restless energy, its skyline a jagged silhouette of glass and steel against the bruised violet of the evening sky. Drones hummed through the air, their red and blue lights weaving patterns like digital fireflies, while hollow billboards flickered with ads for neural implants and off-world vacations. In the heart of the city, in a penthouse overlooking the chaos, Arya Voss sat at her desk, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface. Her eyes, sharp and green as polished jade, scanned lines of code that scrolled faster than most could comprehend. She was a ghost in the machine, a hacker, known only by her alias Specter, and tonight she was hunting. The target was Nexus Corp, a tech conglomerate that had clawed its way to dominance through ruthless acquisitions and shadier means. Arya's vendetta wasn't just professional. It was personal. 5 years ago, Nexus had destroyed her father's company, a small AI startup with dreams of democratizing neural tech. They'd used legal loopholes, planted evidence of fraud, and smeared his name until he was a broken man. He died a year later, leaving Arya with nothing but a hard drive full of his unfinished code and a burning need for justice. She'd spent every moment since then sharpening her skills, building a network of allies in the dark web, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment was now. Her plan was audacious: infiltrate Nexus's quantum servers, expose their dirty secrets, and cripple their empire from the inside. But there was a complication: a man named Cale Renner. Cale was Nexus's lead security architect, a brilliant mind who designed their impenetrable firewall, codenamed Iron Veil. He was also the man Arya had loved, once in a life that felt like a distant dream. They'd met at MIT, two prodigies in a sea of ambition, sharing late-night coding sessions and stolen kisses in the server room. But when Nexus recruited Cale, he'd chosen their offer over her, vanishing into their corporate machine. Now, he was the gatekeeper to her revenge, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to destroy him or save him. Arya's fingers paused over the holokeys as a memory surfaced. Cale's laugh, low and warm, as they debugged code together under fluorescent lights. She shook it off, her jaw tightening. Nostalgia was a luxury she couldn't afford. She activated her custom neural implant, a prototype her father had designed, and her consciousness slipped into the digital ether. The world dissolved into streams of data, a kaleidoscope of ones and zeros. She navigated the dark web with the ease of a shark cutting through water, her implant amplifying her speed and precision. Nexus's outer defenses were child's play firewalls she'd cracked in her sleep, but the Iron Veil was different. It was adaptive, sentient almost, and it bore Cale's signature in every line of its code. She probed its edges, sending microbots to test for weaknesses. The Veil responded instantly, rewriting itself to block her attacks. Arya smirked. Cale had always been clever, but so was she. She deployed a decoy, a flood of junk data, to distract the Veil while slipping a custom worm into a low-priority maintenance port. It was a risky move. If the worm was detected, it could trace back to her. But risk was the currency of revenge. As the worm burrowed, her thoughts drifted to Cale again. She'd seen his face on Nexus's internal feeds older now, with lines etched around his dark eyes, but still achingly familiar. Did he know what Nexus had done to her father? Did he care? The worm pinged a success signal, and Arya refocused. She was in, but only barely. The worm had carved a narrow tunnel into Nexus's quantum servers, enough to glimpse their data, but not enough to do real damage. She needed more time, more access, and that meant getting closer to Cale. The next morning, Arya stood outside a sleek coffee shop in Neon Shroud's tech district, her reflection sharp in the mirrored glass. She'd traded her usual black hoodie for a tailored jacket and boots, her dark hair pulled into a low bun. The disguise was subtle but effective. She looked like just another coder, not the infamous Specter. Cale was inside, predictable as ever, ordering his usual black coffee at 8:15 a.m. She'd hacked his schedule weeks ago, mapping his routines like a predator stalking prey. She pushed through the door, the bell chiming softly. Cale was at the counter, his back to her, broad shoulders tense under a charcoal suit. Her heart stuttered, but she forced it steady. This wasn't a reunion. It was a mission. She ordered a tea, positioning herself 2 tables away, close enough to watch, but not close enough to draw attention. His tablet lay open on the table, its screen glowing with Nexus's logo. Arya activated her implant, linking to a micro-drone. Disguised as a fly, it buzzed toward Cale's tablet, planting a keylogger before he could notice. Cale glanced up, his eyes sweeping the room. For a moment, they locked on hers, and Arya felt the air leave her lungs. Did he recognize her? She'd altered her appearance, just enough contact lenses to shift her eye color, a subtle change in her posture, but Cale had always seen through her masks. His brow furrowed, and then he looked away, dismissing her as a stranger. Relief and disappointment warred within her. She sipped her tea, the keylogger's data streaming to her implant. Passwords, access codes, fragments of his life. She'd have what she needed soon. Back in her penthouse, Arya analyzed the data. Cale's security protocols were airtight, but the keylogger had caught something unexpected. A personal email, unencrypted, sent to an anonymous account. I'm starting to question everything. Meet me at the old pier. Midnight. The words sent a chill through her. Cale, questioning Nexus? It didn't add up. He was their golden boy, their loyal soldier. But the email was a crack in his armor, and Arya intended to exploit it. That night, she stood at the old pier, the wind carrying the tang of salt and rust. Neon shrouds' lights shimmered across the water, a false constellation. She wore a hooded jacket, her implants scanning for surveillance. Cale arrived alone, his silhouette sharp against the city's glow. He hadn't changed, same purposeful stride, same intensity in his gaze. But there was something new, a weariness. That hadn't been there before. Arya, he said, his voice low, and her carefully constructed walls trembled. He'd known it was her. Of course he had. What are you doing here? She could lie, play the coincidence card, but Cale's eyes pinned her in place. I got your email, she said, keeping her tone neutral. Sounds like you're having doubts. His jaw tightened. You shouldn't be here. Nexus is watching me. Then why risk it? She shot back, stepping closer. Too close. She could smell his cologne, the same cedar and steel scent from their college days. What's changed, Cale? He didn't answer right away. His gaze flicked to the water, then back to her. I found something. Data Nexus buried. It's bad, Arya. Worse than you think. Her pulse quickened. This was the leverage she needed. But his tone, raw and unguarded, stirred something in her. Was he playing her, or was he genuinely unraveling? Show me, she said, her voice softer than she intended. Cale hesitated, then pulled the encrypted drive from his pocket. Not here. Somewhere safe. My place, she said, the words out before she could stop them. It was reckless, inviting the enemy into her sanctuary, but she needed that data. And if she was honest, she needed to know if the man she'd loved was still in there. Somewhere. They moved through the city in silence, shadows among shadows. Arya's penthouse was a fortress of tech servers humming, screens casting a cold glow. She plugged the drive into her system, her implant scanning for traps. The data unfolded like a poison flower. Nexus's experiments with neural overrides, tech that could enslave minds. Her father's work, twisted into something monstrous. Rage coiled in her chest, but Kale's presence tempered it. He stood too, close, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "This is why you're doubting them?" she asked, her voice sharp. "It's why I'm done with them," he said quietly. "I didn't know, Arya. Not about your father. Not about any of it. Not until now." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But trust was a blade that cut both ways. "Then help me," she said, her eyes locked on his. "Help me take them down." Kale's hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that sent sparks through her. "I will," he said. "But we do this together." For the first time in years, Arya felt something other than vengeance, a flicker of hope, fragile and dangerous. She nodded, and the pact was sealed. They were no longer just enemies or ex-lovers. They were allies in a war against an empire. But as she looked at Kale, his face half lit by the glow of her screens, she knew this alliance would test her heart. As much as her skills, the hum of Arya's servers filled the penthouse, a constant pulse like the city's heartbeat. She and Kale sat side by side at her rig, their faces bathed in the blue glow of multiple screens. The encrypted drive Kale had given her was a gold mine, but it was also a labyrinth terabytes of data, fragmented and coded to evade casual scrutiny. Nexus's neural override project, codenamed Puppet Master, was worse than Arya had imagined. It wasn't just about control. It was about rewriting free will, turning people into drones without them ever knowing. Her father's tech, meant to heal minds, had been perverted into a weapon. Every file she opened tightened the knot in her chest, but Kale's presence kept her grounded, his steady breathing a counterpoint to her racing thoughts. They worked through the night, decoding files and cross-referencing them with Arya's dark web intel. Kale's knowledge of Nexus's systems was invaluable. He knew their encryption patterns, their dummy servers, their traps. But every time their hands brushed over the holokeys or their eyes met, Arya felt a pull she couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the past. It was the way he looked at her now, like he was seeing her for the first time in years. She wanted to hate him for choosing Nexus over her, for vanishing without a word, but the regret in his eyes chipped away at her defenses. "You didn't tell me why you left," she said abruptly, her voice cutting through the hum of the servers. She didn't look at him, her fingers still moving over the interface, but she felt him tense beside her. Kale exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "I didn't have a choice, Arya. Nexus had leverage in my sister's medical bills. They paid for her treatment, but only if I signed on, exclusively." Arya's hands stilled. She hadn't known about his sister. Kale had always been private, even when they were close, but this felt like a betrayal of a different kind. "You could have told me," she said, her voice quieter now. "I would have helped." "I know," he said, and the rawness in his tone made her look at him. His dark eyes were unguarded, heavy with something unspoken. "But I didn't want to drag you into it. You were building something with your dad, something good. I thought I was protecting you." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "Protecting me? You left me to pick up the pieces when Nexus crushed us. My dad died because of them, Kale." He flinched, but didn't look away. "I didn't know what they were doing to him, not then. By the time I realized, it was too late. I was in too deep." The admission hung between them, heavy as the city's smog. Arya wanted to scream, to throw him out, but the data on her screens demanded her focus. They were close to cracking Puppet Master's core algorithms, and she couldn't let emotion derail her now. "We keep working," she said finally, her voice cold. "But don't think this makes us okay?" Kale nodded, his jaw tight. "Fair enough." They dove back into the data, but the air between them had shifted, charged with unspoken questions. As dawn broke, painting neon shrouds, Skyline in hues of gold and ash, Aria's worm sent an alert. It had found a backdoor in Nexus's quantum servers, a maintenance protocol Kale had unknowingly left unpatched. It was their way in, but it was also a trap waiting to spring. Nexus's AI would detect any large-scale data breach, and the iron. Veil would seal them out, or worse, trace them. We need physical access, Kale said, his voice low. The quantum core is in their black site, off-grid. I can get us in, but it's high risk. Aria's implant buzzed with a risk assessment. 87% chance of detection, 62% chance of capture. She ignored it. Then we go tonight. The black site was a fortress in Neon Shroud's industrial sector, a slab of obsidian concrete, winged with drones and biometric scanners. Aria and Kale approached under cover of darkness, cloaked in stealth suits that bent light to render them near invisible. Her implant fed her real-time data guard patterns, drone trajectories, thermal signatures. Kale moved beside her, silent and precise, his own tech syncing with hers. They were a unit again, like in their MIT days, and the familiarity was both comfort and pain dotted the perimeter. Kale disabled a sensor with a handheld MP, and Aria slipped through, her implant hacking the door's biometric lock. Inside, the air was sterile, heavy with the hum of quantum processors. The core was in a sub-basement, guarded by Nexus's elite security and the Iron Veil's physical counterpart, a laser grid that could slice through steel. Aria's worm had given them a map, but the grid was new, a surprise Kale hadn't anticipated. You didn't mention this, she whispered, her eyes narrowing. I didn't know, he said, his voice tight. They must have upgraded since I last had access. She didn't have time to question his honesty. The grid's pattern shifted every 10 seconds, too fast for manual crossing. Aria linked her implant to the grid's control node, her consciousness, diving into its code. It was like wrestling a living thing Kale's code, elegant and brutal. She found a rhythm, a flaw in its randomization, and sent a pulse to freeze the grid for 3 seconds. Go, she hissed. They sprinted through, the lasers flickering just behind them. In the core chamber, a glowing quantum array pulsed like a heart. Aria plugged in her drive, uploading a virus to corrupt Puppet Master's algorithms. Kale stood watch, his own device scanning for threats. For a moment, they were in sync, their movements fluid, their trust implicit. Then an alarm blared. Shit, Kale muttered, pulling up a holomap. They've got drones incoming. We've got 2 minutes. Aria's virus was at 78% upload. She pushed her implant to its limits, her vision blurring as data surged through her. Kale grabbed her arm, steadying her. Stay with me, he said, his voice cutting through the haze. The upload hit 100%, and the array flickered, its glow dimming as the virus took hold. But the drones were closing in, their thermal scans lighting up her implant. Kale pulled her toward an access tunnel, his hand firm on hers. They ran, the fortress's alarm screaming, the city's pulse chasing them into the dark. They emerged. In an alley, breathless, the stealth suits overheating. Aria's implant pinged Nexus's servers were in chaos, Puppet Master unraveling. They'd done it, but Kale's face was grim. They'll know it was me, he said. I can't go back. Then don't, Aria said, her voice softer than she meant. She stepped closer, her hand brushing his. Come with me. Kale looked at her, his eyes searching hers. For a moment, the city faded, the drones, the alarms, the weight of their past. He leaned in, his breath warm against her cheek, and kissed her. It was brief, desperate, a collision of need and regret. When he pulled back, his voice was low. I never stopped loving you, Aria. Not for a second. Her heart twisted, but the drone's home was closing in. We need to move, she said. pulling him toward the shadows. They'd won a battle, but Nexus wasn't done, and neither was she. The data they'd stolen was only the beginning proof of Puppet Master's horrors, enough to rally her dark web allies. But as she ran with Kale, his hand in hers, she knew this fight was no longer just about revenge. It was about them, and what they could rebuild from the ashes of their past. The safe house was a relic of Neon Shroud's underbelly, a crumbling warehouse tucked between rusted shipping containers and forgotten dreams. Inside, Arya and Kale worked. Under the flicker of a single LED panel, their faces etched with exhaustion and resolve. The air smelled of oil and damp concrete, a stark contrast to the sterile glow of Nexus's black site. Arya's servers, salvaged from her penthouse before Nexus could trace her, hummed in the corner, processing the stolen Puppet Master data. Every byte was a weapon, proof of Nexus's atrocities' neural overrides tested on unwitting subjects. Minds erased for corporate gain. Arya's father had dreamed of tech that empowered. Nexus had turned it into chains. Kale sat across from her, his tablet linked to her system, decoding the final layers of encryption. His presence was a constant distraction, his quiet intensity pulling at memories she'd buried deep. The kiss in the alley lingered in her mind, a reckless moment that had cracked open something she wasn't ready to face. She focused on the data instead, her implants sorting through files at inhuman speed. They had enough to expose Nexus, but exposure wasn't enough. Arya wanted them dismantled, their empire reduced to code dust. And for that, they needed to go public strategically, irreversibly. "We leak it," she said, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "Dark web first to my contacts. They'll amplify it to every major platform before Nexus can scrub it." Kale's eyes flicked to her, wary. "They'll come for us, Arya. Hard, you leak this, there's no going back." "There never was," she shot back, her gaze locking on his. "You think I spent 5 years building Specter just to walk away? Nexus took everything from me. My dad, my future." She stopped, the words catching. "You?" Kale's jaw tightened, and he looked away, his fingers pausing over his tablet. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly. "I thought I was saving you from my mess, but I was wrong. I see that now." The admission hit harder than she expected, softening the edges of her anger. She wanted to reach for him, to bridge the years of pain, but the mission came first. Always. "Help me finish this," she said instead. "Then we'll talk about us." He nodded, and they dove back into the work. Arya's dark web allies hackers, whistleblowers, rogue AIs were already buzzing with fragments of the Puppet Master leak. She sent the full dataset through encrypted channels, each packet tagged with a viral algorithm to ensure it spread faster than Nexus could contain. Kale bolstered her efforts, using his insider knowledge to target Nexus's PR servers, planting seeds of doubt in their public-facing systems. By dawn, the city was alive with whispers #PuppetMaster trending on underground forums, hollow billboards glitching with leaked footage of Nexus's experiments. But Nexus wasn't idle. Arya's implant pinged with alerts, drones sweeping the city, Nexus's private security combing the streets. They'd traced the breach to the black site, and Kale's defection was now an open wound. "They're locking down the grid," Kale said, his voice tight as he scanned a holomap. "Checkpoints at every major node. We can't stay here." Arya's mind raced. The safe house was compromised, but they needed one final strike to cripple Nexus for good. Their CEO, Elara Voss, no relation. A cruel twist of fate was the linchpin. She controlled the board, the narrative, the tech. If they could hack her personal neural implant, they could expose her direct involvement in Puppet Master. It was a suicide mission, but Arya was past caring about survival. This was about justice. "We hit Elara's implant," Arya said, her. voice cold. She's at the Nexus Gala tonight. Full security, but her implant will be active, linked to their private network. We can use that. Kale's eyes darkened. Her implant's guarded by a custom veil variant. I built it. It's not just code, it's tied to her biometrics. One wrong move and it'll fry her brain or ours. Then we don't make mistakes, Arya said, meeting his gaze. You in? He hesitated, then nodded. For you, always. The gala was a glittering facade. Neon Shroud's elite gathered in a tower of gloss and light. Arya and Kale infiltrated. As catering staff, their stealth suits swapped for crisp uniforms, their implants cloaking their digital signatures. The ballroom thrummed with wealth hall chandeliers, casting prismatic patterns, guests with neural implants glowing faintly. At their temples, Elara Voss held court at the center, her silver hair a crown, her smile a blade. Arya's hatred burned, but she kept it leashed, her implants scanning for Elara's network. Kale worked beside her, his movements precise as he planted micro-relays around the room, creating a mesh network to amplify their signal. Their plan was simple but brutal. Hack Elara's implant, extract her puppet master directives, and broadcast them live to every screen in the city. Arya's worm, upgraded with Kale's veil-breaking algorithms, was their key. But as they activated the hack, the room's lights flickered, and Elara's head snapped toward them, her implant pulsing red. She knows, Kale whispered, grabbing Arya's wrist. The crowd didn't notice, but security drones were already converging, their scanners locking on. Arya's implant screamed warnings Elara's veil was counterattacking, a digital venom trying to fry her neural pathways. She gritted her teeth, pushing her implant to its limits, her vision swimming as she fought to hold the connection. Stay with me, Kale said, his voice anchoring her. He linked his own implant to hers, sharing the load. Their minds merged. In the digital space, a dizzying intimacy that felt like their old coding nights, but infinitely more raw. Together, they broke through, the worm sinking into Elara's implant. Data flooded out orders to deploy Puppet Master, names of test subjects, proof of her complicity. Arya broadcasted, her implant screaming as it pushed the signal to every hollow screen, every neural feed, every corner of Neon Shroud. The gala erupted in chaos, guests staring as Elara's secrets played out in vivid detail. Security closed in, but Kale was already pulling Arya toward an exit, their hands locked together. They ran, drones shrieking behind them, the city a blur of light and sound. They made it to a rooftop, the safe house long abandoned, Neon Shroud sprawling below like a digital sea. Arya's implant was fried, her head throbbing, but the broadcast was unstoppable now. Nexus was crumbling, its stock plummeting, its secrets laid bare. Elara would face justice, if not from the law, then from the mob of a city betrayed. Kale pulled her close, his breath ragged. We did it, he said, his voice rough with relief. You did it. We, she corrected, her voice soft. She looked at him, really looked, seeing the boy she'd loved and the man he'd become. The pain was still there, but so was something else, hope, fragile but real. What now? He smiled, a rare, unguarded thing. We disappear. Together. Start over, somewhere Nexus can't touch us. Arya hesitated, the weight of her revenge lifting but leaving scars behind. She'd spent years fueled by hate, but Kale's hand in hers felt like a future she hadn't dared imagine. Together, she echoed, and leaned into him, the city's chaos fading as their lips met, a promise sealed against the neon night. They slipped into the shadows, two ghosts in a city of machines, their love a quiet rebellion against a world that had tried to break them. Nexus would fall, but Arya and Kale would rise, their hearts and code entwined, ready to carve a new path in a world remade.